The girl got off the school bus just a few meters from her own home and seemed to fall into the ground. Hundreds of police and volunteers searched for her, combing tens of kilometers. This case very quickly came to a standstill, since detectives had only one clue, and only 30 years later the unexpected truth finally became known. Jennifer Odom was born on August 25, 1980 in the small American city of Data City, Florida. After 3 years, she had a younger sister, and soon after that their parents decided to divorce, and the girl's father left for another city, and they stayed to live with their mother. Sometime later, the woman met a man named Clark, and they got married. After this, the family settled in the small town of St. Joseph, which was a 10-minute drive from Data City. It was a quiet and sparsely populated place, where many residents lived on farms, engaged in agriculture. The girl really liked music, so she learned to play the clarinet and performed in the school orchestra. Her recent hobby was water skiing, and she achieved outstanding results in this sport. She took 7th place in the ranking of the best athletes in the country in her age group. On Friday, February 19, 1993, Renee, the schoolgirl's mother, drove Jennifer to the bus stop as usual and waited for her to get inside the school bus. Usually the girl went to the back of the bus and sat in the last seat to watch her mother follow her. This was their daily ritual. After a few hundred meters, Renee turned into the alley leading to her work, and Jennifer always waved goodbye to her. That morning it all happened again, but unfortunately, for the last time. After class, Jennifer boarded the school bus with the other children. At about 3 o'clock, the driver dropped her off at a bus stop, which was less than 200 meters from her house, and she slowly walked towards the house, holding a backpack in one hand and a case with a clarinet in the other. Jennifer and her 9-year-old sister, Jessica, usually took 2 different buses from school, but only Jennifer had the key to the house. Another key was kept by my grandmother, who lived nearby. The older sister usually waited for the younger sister at home, but sometimes the girl made fun of her and locked herself in the house. In such cases, Jessica would go to her grandmother to get the key, and when she went inside, Jennifer would jump out from somewhere and scare her. Jessica was already accustomed to these tricks of Jennifer, so after knocking on the locked door and not waiting for an answer, she went to her grandmother. The girl was sure that when she opened the door, her sister would jump out from around the corner and scare her. But this time she was greeted by dead silence in the house. Confused, Jessica called her mother at work and told her that she couldn't find her sister. She called the parents of her daughter's best friend, Michelle, who always rode on the same bus with her. She said that Jenny, as her friends called her, got off the bus that day and headed home. The search for Jennifer began at approximately 4:30 p.m., which was half an hour after Renee called the police to report her daughter missing. In addition to the police, family members, friends, neighbors, and volunteers took part in the search efforts. Sniffer dogs were soon brought to the scene and lost track of Jennifer about 50 meters from the stop. Even a helicopter took part in the search and flew over the entire area several times, hoping to find what ground searchers had missed. But Jennifer was never found. Later, when the police interviewed the children riding on the same bus as Jenny, it turned out that they had seen an old blue pickup truck with a silver-painted rear bumper and a ladder in the back not far from the bus stop. The car moved just as the bus disappeared around the bend, and Jennifer walked along the side of the road towards the house. However, it was not clear whether he had anything to do with the girl's disappearance. Neither the truck nor the driver, a 40-year-old man with shoulder-length brown hair, have ever been identified. On the evening of February 19, the schoolgirl's family and their friends went to the county fair. By midnight, each of her visitors received a leaflet informing them of the disappearance of a fair-haired girl with brown eyes. In the days that followed, hundreds of volunteers combed forests and orange groves throughout Pasco County, and flyers with a picture of a smiling Jennifer appeared in all nearby towns. In addition, The police checked the owners of every blue pickup truck within a 50-kilometer radius and interviewed everyone who might know anything about this case. But even such measures did not produce any results. 6 days later, on February 25, volunteers found a body in an old orange grove located 19 kilometers from Jennifer's house. And although dental records were used to confirm the identity, it was immediately clear to everyone who it was. The victim was wearing some of the clothes Jennifer was wearing on the day she disappeared, as well as 2 rings and a gold chain with 2 pendants, one of which was a half-heart with the words "best friends." The medical examiner determined that Jennifer died on the day of her disappearance. Unfortunately, the following days the weather was very warm. This greatly complicated the work of criminologists. In the end, it turned out that the police had no evidence, and the trail with a blue pickup truck and a long-haired man led investigators to a dead end. In fact, the investigation froze before it even really began. Most of Jennifer's clothes were never found, but 2 years later, on January 5, 1995, 2 local residents came across a clarinet case and a school backpack. It soon became clear that they belonged to Jennifer. The discovery was made 48 kilometers from her home and 29 kilometers from the orange grove where Odom's body was found. The things were lying in the middle of the forest in an illegal dump. The way they were hidden showed that the killer was well acquainted with the area. This could only mean one thing. Jennifer's killer was a resident of Pasco County. Well-known clairvoyant from Pennsylvania, Nancy Meyer, who claims to have assisted police for 20 years and participated in the investigation of more than 300 criminal cases, immediately became interested in Jennifer's case and decided to solve it on her own. Nancy believes that 2 men are guilty of Jenny's death, who stopped nearby on that fateful day under the pretext of asking for directions. When the girl approached them, they dragged her into the car and took her to the orange grove. According to Nancy, one of the kidnappers was a muscular man of average height who worked as an auto mechanic, and the second was a heavy smoker. Alas, these assumptions did not help in any way in the investigation of the crime. On December 2, 1994, Jennifer Odom's story appeared on an episode of the popular documentary series Unsolved Mysteries, attracting media attention. This, however, did not speed up the solving of the case, in which many were suspected over the following years. One of them was serial killer Frank T. Potts, who operated in Florida during this period. The other is Walter Descharme, a local man who served time for kidnapping, but none of them were charged. It is curious that in June 2013, the police received an anonymous tip. Supposedly at the bottom of Lake Evatt, which is located 6 kilometers from Jennifer's house, there is a blue pickup truck. The reservoir was searched for 2 days, but no traces of the car were found. The lake, by the way, belongs to Al Kiefer, who was 46 years old at the time of Jennifer's murder. Coincidentally or not, he had a long haircut at the time and owned a black pickup truck, which the man sold in 1993, just a month after the murder. In 2015, the police had a new suspect connected to another case. On January 16, 1992, a year before Jennifer's murder, an unknown man attacked a 17-year-old girl in Spring Hill. He waited until she got off the school bus, forced her into his car, and took her to a deserted place, where he sexually abused her and struck her with a blunt object on the head. After that, he fled the place, and 2 hours later the victim was discovered by her relatives. She was on the verge of death, but doctors managed to save her life. However, she was left with severe brain damage that forced her to be institutionalized for the rest of her life, and her attacker was never found. Experts extracted his biological material and isolated his DNA profile, but there were no matches. This continued until 2015, until a partial match was displayed in the database. The DNA of a man who was apparently related to the attacker was added there. They quickly learned that his father was 61-year-old Jeffrey Crum, who lived nearby. After obtaining a sample of his DNA, they obtained a perfect match. and the man was arrested. The detectives in Jennifer's case immediately began to take a closer look at him, since there were many similarities between these cases. Firstly, Cram lived and worked not far from the bus stop where the girl was abducted. Secondly, both victims were attacked after getting off their school buses. Thirdly, they were both hit in the head with a heavy blunt object. And finally, Crum abandoned his first victim just 15 minutes from the place where Jennifer's body would be found a year later. In 2019, Crum was found guilty of assaulting that girl and received 2 life sentences. Since then, investigators have focused their efforts on finding any evidence that would link him to Jennifer's case, since the 2 crimes had too much in common to be chalked up to coincidence. They visited him in prison several times to ask questions. Police learned that Crum had a blue pickup truck, but the man denied any involvement. In subsequent years, detectives practically did not comment on the progress of the investigation. Only at the end of July 2023 did they organize a press conference at which they announced the arrest of Jeffrey Crum in the Jennifer case. They said that over the past few years they had been collecting evidence against this man, and now they are absolutely sure that it was he who killed the girl. Detectives say they have evidence that proves his guilt, but they did not release all the details before the trial, as is usually the case. Given the confidence of the police, there may be several options. The most likely, a partial fingerprint from Jennifer's things match Crum's prints. It is also possible that experts re-examined the victim's belongings and found a sample of his DNA on them, which could not be detected with old tools. During the press conference, it also became known that the prosecutor will seek the death penalty. This once again indicates that the detectives should have discovered very significant evidence confirming Crum's guilt.